I'm joined by GB News' economics and business editor, Liam Halligan. Liam, they're funny things, budgets, aren't they? Because, you know, what gets said in the hour and 6 minutes as it was, and then the small print, the analysis, time to think it through. If this was designed to be the big tax-cutting budget, the agenda-changing budget, I mean, I would argue it seems to have bombed.
Budgets, they're like a window onto the soul of the politician or the senior politicians controlling them. And this very much is a double act. Obviously, the Prime Minister was recently the Chancellor.
Yep.
And this is very much
point.
a number 10 and number 11 effort. This was by no means a pre-election budget. It was lacking in definition. It was lacking in courage, I would say. It strikes me that Jeremy Hunt is a very low-key politician who should really have gone into bat against the OBR and pushed back for what he believes in. But I think he's delivered a budget that's very, very cautious in order to mollify this group of Whitehall-based economists, faceless bureaucrats. Of course, civil servants should have some role to play. Of course, they should offer up forecasts which the politicians look at. And of course, you've got to rein in political excess. But it strikes me that the Tory party's fate is now in the hands of both the Office for Budget Responsibility and the monetary policy of the Bank of England, because they need tax cuts, they need interest rate cuts. Are they going to happen?
But they've allowed it. And you made a couple of very interesting points there, that it lacks definition and lacks courage. But maybe that sums up this government.
I think it does. It was almost as if the Chancellor was signalling to his tribe, I'm still a Conservative, I'm still a Conservative. I do want to get rid of national insurance. I do want taxes to come down. But even if you take into account, you know, admittedly, the quite eye-catching now 4p reduction in the headline rate of national insurance from 12 to 10 and now 10 to 8. The 12 to 10 came in January. The 10 to 8 will come in from April. The overall tax burden, because of fiscal drag, because of the thresholds being frozen where they are, is still going up. We're still heading for the highest tax burden in 70 years.
This is the point. There's fiscal drag in terms of, we say that, you know, that the levels at which we start paying different rates of tax aren't going up. But also, there's alcohol juices. They didn't go up yesterday. Hardly a victory for the pubs, I would suggest. If a tax doesn't go up, it's hardly a boost. But we're paying more on alcohol, more on tobacco, more on car tax, more on council tax. And yet, Liam, despite what you said a moment ago, Hunt said brazenly to the Commons of the country that if you're a median earner, you're now paying less tax than you were since 1975. It's just not true, is it?
I can't stand up that figure. I've been trying to
I've
been trying to stand up that figure, as we say in journalism. Look, there has been a bit of a tax cut for average earners because of this national insurance reduction. And it's about 950 quid. But in the round, with fiscal drag, as you said, with those thresholds frozen all the way until 2028, the overall tax that they're paying has gone up a great deal. That is the problem. People aren't feeling better about life. You know, it's the famous Ronald Reagan question, do you feel better than 4 years ago? Is your family better off than 4 years ago? And they're not. Another move that I thought was pretty retrograde, if you want to get growth moving, and was very much a kind of playing to the progressive gallery rather than what ordinary people think and feel, was to extend the windfall tax on North Sea oil and gas in Scotland. You know, these companies in the North Sea, they're not big oil majors with profits from all over the world. They're often small British companies, heavily indebted. I know you know this sector very well as a former energy trader yourself. And the idea that you're going to get an extra £1.5 billion from extending a 75% tax on the profits of North Sea, it's not going to happen, because a lot of projects will just close down because they're completely unviable. And this is the problem. The Chancellor's trying to get money by raising extra taxes without understanding that those higher taxes will have what we call behavioural effects. They will affect the way people act and lead to less money going into the Treasury's coffers.
Could this have been a pre-election Labour budget?
I think it certainly smells, if you like a Labour budget. It has the shape and definition of a Labour budget. And indeed, you know, he pinched quite a lot of Labour's clothes. His move on non-domicile taxation was very much a Labour policy, wasn't it? It's almost as if he's trying to shoot Labour's foxes. Look, what ordinary people want is they want to keep more of their own money so they can spend it on themselves and their family.
And make choices.
And they don't mind paying more taxes as long as the public services are decent. And we've got this really awful combination at the moment. And a lot of it is because the long hangover from lockdown. When you borrow £400 billion basically in a year, the trajectory of your public finances isn't going to be the same for a long time. So we've got this combination of very high taxation, of crumbling public services, not least because there's an awful lot of people now demanding the use of those public services, to go back to what you were saying before. And we've got a situation where there's almost no growth. It's very hard for an economy to grow when taxation is so high. And without growth, politics gets so much more difficult.
Absolutely.
Because the pie is smaller and the arguments are more vicious.
Well, cutting spending is hard. Cutting public spending is hard. It was one said to me that, with public spending, it's like giving a dog a bone.
That's right.
It's easy to give it, but it's jolly hard.
That's right.
To get it back, and that makes sense to me.
So you grow your way.
So you grow your way out.
That's right.
And even Mrs. Thatcher didn't cut spending, particularly 40 years ago.
No.
We grew our way out. Hunt yesterday talked endlessly about growth. Are we in a recession or not?
We were officially in a recession in the sense that 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. That happened between June and December last year. Fact. We now know that because the GDP numbers have come out. There's a very slight chance they could be revised upwards. They were the preliminary numbers for the final quarter. But bar the shouting, the economy got smaller for the second half of last year. I don't think we're now in a recession, Nigel. To give the Chancellor his due, the fact that interest rates are set to come down, the fact that inflation has come down. You look at the survey data of business sentiment, investment flows.
Yeah.
I do think we're growing. I think we grew in January and I think we grew in February as well. But
it's
marginal. It's very, very marginal. There's no great bounce back from lockdown. We haven't really had, Nigel, a big bounce back from the global financial crisis of 2009-10.
No.
Our economy has been flatlining now for over a decade, and that's a problem. And one of the reasons for that, in my view, is the lack of tax incentives to get business going, to get investments moving. The red tape that's been piled on small businesses, who are the real engine of our economy.
And none of them got anything for the budget yesterday at all. White Van Man said, don't tell me I'm better off because fuel duty has been frozen. A publican I spoke to this morning said much the same thing.
Tiny increase in the VAT threshold.
5,000.
The first increase in 7 years, that
5,000.
VAT threshold. And also, I think he should have been bold. The OBR wouldn't let him do it, but I think he should have pushed back anyway. Raise the personal allowance, Nigel, from 12.5 grand to 20 grand.
Make work
Take
pay.
3 or 4 million people out of tax altogether. Get rid of the incentives that mean a lot of Brits, it makes more sense for them not to work. We've got to tackle these benefit traps.
I think you were right when you mentioned the courage word a moment ago. It doesn't seem to be much of it about. Liam, thank you very much indeed.